Two board members were already yanking the spray paint cans from his recycling bin when Darren Polk stepped out onto the porch. One of them was yelling something about proof.
The other?
He had his foot planted squarely over Darren's lawn gnome, the one with the tiny camera lens hidden in its eyes. They didn't see it, but it saw everything. The HOA president, Victor Maddox, turned and pointed toward Darren's porch, like a courtroom prosecutor mid-verdict. There he is. Came out of his garage at 1 a.m. last night, tagging the back entrance of the clubhouse like a teenager. "You're serious right now?" Darren asked, still in his socks. Victor didn't flinch. "We had 3 residents report seeing a figure matching your description. Gray hoodie, black jeans, sprayed board lies right across the brick." He even used air quotes when he said it. Like it was scripted. Like this whole scene was some local HOA theater. Darren stepped down onto the grass, slowly, eyes narrowing on the can. Victor held aloft like a trophy. "That's Krylon. I don't even use Krylon, and that's not my bin." Victor didn't care. "Intense what matters. You've had issues with the board before. You argued during the pool closure vote. You called us. What was it? Unqualified lawn generals. You are unqualified lawn generals." That got a laugh from someone nearby. One of the neighbors who'd come out to see the spectacle forming on their quiet cul-de-sac. It wasn't just about the graffiti. It was about shaming him publicly, in front of the people who walked past his yard every day, in front of the moms who waved with tight smiles, and the retired couples who peeked through blinds before calling the HOA hotline over dandelions. Victor was staging a takedown, but he had no idea the entire thing was being recorded from 3 angles. 3 weeks ago, Darren had installed motion-triggered cams, disguised as landscaping decorations, gnomes, flower bed rocks, a birdhouse. Not because he expected trouble, but because he was tired of unexplained notes being left in his mailbox every time he missed a meeting or parked 1 inch over the curb line. Then last week, someone keyed the passenger side of his truck. 2 days later, a plastic letter D was snapped off his mailbox. No witnesses, no confessions, but the HOA's internal Facebook group, full of smug little jabs. Victor had been quiet until now. Darren's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a push alert. Motion detected. Side lawn camera 2. He tapped the notification. The live feed loaded. And there they were, Victor and his 2 cronies, standing right over the fake sprinkler head, caught in ultra-wide-angle 1080p, holding a can of paint they had just pulled from someone else's bin. A bin that belonged to Ethan Carver, the same neighbor who'd run for board vice president and lost to Victor by a single vote. Interesting. Darren looked up from his phone and smiled, but didn't say anything. Not yet. Victor crossed his arms now, adopting the tone of a patient father scolding a lying teenager. "Look, we can handle this in-house. You admit it, clean it up, pay for the pressure wash, and we'll consider it a closed matter. And if I don't," Victor shrugged, "then we make a community post. Let the neighborhood decide." So that was the play. Public humiliation, guilt by inference. Forget evidence, just get enough people to believe it, and it becomes true. Darren raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want the neighborhood watching?" "I'm counting on it." "Good," Darren said, tapping his screen again. "Because they will." Victor blinked. "What?" Darren tilted his phone toward him. Just long enough for the thumbnail to start playing. In the image, Victor could be seen holding the can. Behind him, Ethan's bin. And in the corner? A timestamp and the HOA logo, painted 2 nights earlier before Darren had even come home from his night shift. Victor's face didn't change, but his eyes did. Darren turned to go back inside. "You came to play judge. You should have checked that the court had cameras." Darren didn't upload the footage immediately. He didn't rush to the Facebook group or email it to the neighborhood listserv. That would have been satisfying, sure, but short-lived. It would have just triggered Victor's spin machine, another wave of misunderstood context and fabricated editing. Instead, Darren went quiet. And when someone like Victor expects you to lash out, silence becomes power. He spent the next 2 hours pulling footage from every camera around his yard. Camera 1, the birdhouse on the fence. Camera 2, the lawn gnome by the sidewalk. Camera 3, the fake sprinkler head near the edge of Ethan Carver's driveway. Every angle showed the same thing. Victor and 2 board members, pulling the spray paint can from Ethan's recycling bin, then walking it over to Darren's front lawn, like they'd just discovered it. And one clip even caught Victor rehearsing what to say. "We'll tell him it was a neighborhood tip. No need to get the city involved yet. Play it cool." They were framing him. Plain and simple. Darren uploaded everything to a private Google Drive folder. He labeled each file cleanly. HOA_staging_01.move. HOA_evidence planting_02. Move Victor_rehearsal_audio.mp. He knew how this game worked. He didn't just need truth, he needed clarity. And receipts. That evening, he drafted a short email. It wasn't to the HOA board. Not yet. He sent it to Trina Knox, a local journalist who ran a podcast called Suburban Checkmate, a quiet hit in the local area, especially among younger homeowners who'd had enough of HOA bullying. He knew she covered shady housing issues, even exposed a neighboring HOA last year for illegally denying solar panel approvals to certain homes based on aesthetic concerns. Subject: local HOA caught planting vandalism evidence. I have footage. He included 2 clips and a short message. Victor Maddox is trying to smear me. I have 3 camera angles that prove it. I'm not looking for attention. I'm looking for accountability. If you want exclusive rights to the story, it's yours. By midnight, Trina responded. Watched it 3 times. I'll bite. Meet me tomorrow? He replied instantly. You bring the mic, I'll bring the truth. While Victor probably assumed Darren was fuming, ranting, licking wounds, Darren was sitting at the dining table, drawing up a list of every rule Victor had ignored during the staged accusation. No board vote before initiating disciplinary action. No notice or request for a homeowner response. Trespassing without cause or consent. Weaponizing community alert systems. False public accusation of criminal behavior. He wasn't just going to clear his name. He was going to put the entire board under review. At 10 a.m., Darren met Trina at the coffee shop across from the Civic Center. She didn't waste time. Mic out. Camera on. Red light blinking. Tell me exactly what happened. He laid it out like a timeline. Only this one came with synced security footage and facial recognition. Trina didn't interrupt. She just nodded, already forming the structure of the episode in her mind. When he finished, she sat back and smiled. This drops in 2 days. Title: Caught Red-Handed. When the HOA becomes the villain. Think it'll get attention? Victor's gonna wish he'd stuck to citations. Darren didn't wait for the episode to go live. That afternoon, he walked into the HOA office with a small envelope and a flash drive. Elise, the assistant secretary, looked up from her desk. She wasn't in on the setup. She looked exhausted. Victor's not in. Wasn't hoping he was. He slid the envelope across the counter. Here's a digital copy of the security footage. The original is with my lawyer and a journalist. If the board doesn't retract its public accusation within 48 hours, I'll move forward with legal action. You're serious? I'm recorded serious. He gave a polite nod and walked out. On the way home, he stopped by Ethan Carver's driveway. You know they pulled the can from your bin, right? He asked. Ethan blinked, then exhaled. I knew something was off. They offered me a board seat 2 weeks ago if I helped clean up some votes. I told them no. Haven't heard from them since. Victor didn't take it well, huh? Let's just say he doesn't do know very well. Darren chuckled. Well, good news. He's about to learn a new word: accountability. The next HOA meeting was supposed to be about irrigation costs and neighborhood speed bumps. It wasn't. By 6:30 p.m., every folding chair in the Cedar Ridge community room was full. A few people stood near the walls, phones in hand, whispering to each other as the board filtered in. Victor Maddox walked in last. He looked calm, but Darren could see the tightness in his jaw, the way his eyes swept the crowd like he was counting how many people had come to watch him fall. He probably already knew. The podcast episode had gone live 2 hours earlier. Darren sat near the front, sleeves rolled, folder resting across his lap. Trina had sent him the link as soon as it dropped, titled exactly as promised: Caught Red-Handed. When the HOA becomes the villain. This week, we expose a suburban board president, caught staging a vandalism accusation, while standing directly on the homeowner's security camera. Footage included. The clip had been shared over 2,000 times in the local neighborhood groups, before Victor even poured his morning coffee. And now, here he was, pretending this was just another Tuesday. Victor cleared his throat and opened the meeting with an obvious pivot. Good evening, everyone. Before we get into our agenda, I want to acknowledge there's been some confusion circulating online. He didn't look at Darren. He looked at the back wall, anywhere but straight ahead. An edited video clip has been shared that appears to show members of this board acting without protocol. We're investigating its accuracy. Darren stood up. Not suddenly, not aggressively, just clearly. It's not a clip. It's a compilation from 3 separate time-synced camera angles. And it's not edited. It's compressed, so you wouldn't have to sit through the full 5 minutes of you planting a can of paint in my bin. The room went silent. No gasps, no murmurs, just tension. Real tension. Victor finally looked at him. This isn't the place. This is exactly the place. Darren turned slightly, addressing the entire room now. I was accused of defacing the clubhouse. I was told I could either confess or be publicly shamed. And when I refused to lie, this board tried to do it anyway. He opened the folder, pulled out a still image from the video. Victor holding the can, standing directly on top of the disguised gnome camera. He held it up. They didn't know I'd installed a new security system. They didn't know it recorded audio. And they didn't know I'd share it with someone who wouldn't let them bury it. Someone near the back clapped. 1 clap, then 3. Then the room gave in. No standing ovation, but enough to matter. Enough to shift weight. Victor pressed his palms flat on the table. We acted on multiple eyewitness reports. No, you didn't. Darren interrupted. I pulled the HOA security logs from that night. The only people who accessed the clubhouse camera feed were you and your secretary. And guess what? That camera wasn't working. But mine was. He flipped to another printout, an image of the neighborhood Facebook group, where a post had gone up from Victor just 1 day before the incident. Remember this. Big changes coming to HOA leadership soon. Watch this space. You thought if you embarrassed me enough, I'd back off. Maybe resign from the volunteer committee. Maybe sell my place. Darren locked eyes with him now. But that's not going to happen. Elise, seated 2 chairs down from Victor, leaned toward her microphone. Her voice was quiet, but steady. Mr. Polk, would you be willing to submit the full footage and your evidence to the board for formal review? Already emailed. Full copies, time-stamped, unedited, and shared with the city's neighborhood integrity office. They have it too. Elise nodded once. Then I moved to suspend any disciplinary discussions involving Lot 16, pending formal board review and external mediation. Victor didn't second it. Someone else did. It passed. Darren sat back down, heart steady. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't even tense, because the truth had landed. And this time, it stuck. After the meeting, 3 neighbors stopped him near the sidewalk. One of them, Miss Rowland, who used to glare at his trash bins every Tuesday, actually patted his shoulder. You handled that with class, she said. Victor's been a problem for years. We just didn't have proof. Now we do. Darren replied. Inside his house, the notification light blinked on his phone. A new message from Trina. Episode trending. Victor just posted a 400-word clarifications on his personal Facebook. Half the comments are laughing. Want to come on again? Darren smiled. Maybe after the next HOA meeting. Because this fight wasn't over. But the balance had shifted. And from here on out, Victor wouldn't be the only one holding the mic. The garage door opened at 2:06 a.m. Not Darren's. Victor's. And Darren watched it happen, in real time from his phone, wide awake in bed, because motion alert #7 had gone off. For the second night in a row, the HOA office, empty since yesterday's meeting, had suddenly become Victor Maddox's new after-hours hangout. And this time, he wasn't alone. Darren zoomed in. Victor stepped into the frame, glancing up and down the sidewalk like a man checking for ghosts. Behind him came Mitch Kolner, one of the remaining board members, still loyal to Victor after the scandal broke. Mitch carried a thick manila envelope. Victor held a clipboard, and both of them were wearing rubber gloves. Darren watched them fiddle with the office lockbox, then slide inside without turning on the overhead light. Just flashlights, low beams, tactical, like a burglary, but dressed up in bureaucracy. They stayed for 7 minutes. When they left, they didn't take anything. But when Darren checked the live feed of the HOA office interior, he saw it. A new stack of forms, incident reports, 4 of them, filed against him. The next morning, they were taped to the HOA board at the community clubhouse entrance. No email, no printed notice in the mail, just 4 laminated complaints, pinned under the glass like neighborhood artwork. Each one detailed a different accusation. Loitering near the clubhouse late at night, unauthorized security surveillance, aggressive behavior toward board members, and creating a hostile environment for HOA leadership. The kicker? Each form was pre-signed by the board, all dated 2 days earlier. By mid-morning, Darren's phone was lighting up. Screenshots were spreading in the community group chat. Neighbors were confused. Weren't the cameras installed months ago? How is a doorbell cam hostile? Why would someone predate 4 complaints? No one said Victor's name, but they didn't need to. Everyone knew. This wasn't just a smear campaign. It was a last-ditch attempt to stack paper before the fall. Darren didn't say a word online. Not this time. Instead, he pulled up the footage from the HOA office, clipped the exact timestamp, and embedded it into a new private drive link. Then he did something he hadn't done yet. He walked 2 doors down, to Mrs. Annette Lowell, retired lawyer, quiet as a church pew, but sharp as a switchblade. She was the one neighbor Victor never touched, probably because she still owned the land deed from her late husband's construction firm, the one that helped build half the subdivision back in the 80s. Darren knocked. She answered in a housecoat and pearls. "Darren, I was wondering when you'd stop pacing and actually show up." He grinned. "Can I borrow a few legal opinions? Only if you bring coffee. Black. No cream. I don't sugarcoat." By noon, Annette had reviewed the footage twice. By 12:04 p.m., she had already drafted a cease and desist letter addressed to the HOA board, outlining 4 falsified reports, unauthorized surveillance by board officers, intent to defame, and a formal request for a full board ethics investigation under City Housing Code 7-108. She slid the printed letter across the table. "You drop this off in person," she said. "Not email. Let them feel it. Think it'll stop them?" "No," she replied. "But it'll expose them. And that's all you need. You don't need to bury a snake. You just have to cut the grass short enough for everyone to see it slither." Darren delivered the envelope that afternoon. Victor wasn't there, but Elise was. She read the letter once, then sat back in her chair. "I figured he'd do something like this. But this? Fake filings with fake signatures?" She didn't ask for more proof. She didn't have to. That night, Elise called an emergency meeting. This one wasn't open to residents, but word still got out. By 8 p.m., Darren received a text from someone inside the room. "He's done. Elise is calling a vote. Unanimous. He doesn't even have the guts to stay in the room." Victor Maddox resigned from the HOA board at 8:37 p.m. under the vague excuse of family health matters. His final message was a single sentence sent to the board's group email. "I regret nothing but the way this community turned its back on its standards." The irony. By then no one cared what his standards were. They had seen what he was willing to do to maintain control, and they weren't impressed. At sunrise the next morning, Darren walked out to grab his newspaper, and noticed something different. The clubhouse bulletin board. Clean. The fake reports. Gone. Replaced by a single printed sheet with Elise's handwriting. "All formal actions against Lot 16 have been withdrawn. We apologize for the misconduct. A full policy rewrite is underway." And below that, a sticky note from Annette. "Told you, snakes can't hide forever." Victor Maddox was gone, but his shadows still clung to every corner of the neighborhood like pollen in spring, settling quietly, irritating everything it touched. At first, the HOA pretended not much had changed. The emails still came, still signed from the board, like a ghost committee with no face and no spine. A weekly notice reminded residents about mailbox paint colors, and a new flyer about lawn clippings was posted in the clubhouse window. But nobody read them. They just passed by with a glance and a scoff. Whatever power those papers once had burned out with Victor's credibility. Inside the clubhouse, the mood had shifted. Elise sat at the front of the long oak table during her first official board meeting as interim president. There was no ceremonial language, no applause, just clipped voices, nervous silence, and the weight of what everyone now understood. For the first time in years, people weren't scared of breaking rules. They were watching who had written them. Darren didn't attend the first few meetings after Victor stepped down. He didn't need to. The storm was already moving, and he could feel it from his front porch. Neighbors who used to give tight, passive nods now looked him in the eye. Some smiled. Some didn't say anything, but they didn't avoid him anymore. The distance was shrinking. So was the fear. One morning, while Darren was walking Max, he passed by Ethan Carver's house. Ethan had mostly stayed quiet throughout the scandal, but today he stepped out of his garage with a nod and a wave. "Heard they're rewriting the bylaws," he said, pulling the lid off his trash bin. "They are," Darren replied, "but they're using the old ones as a template, so they're just rearranging the furniture in a burning house. Feels that way." Ethan looked down at the bin, then back at Darren. "If you ever decide to run, you've got my vote." Darren didn't answer right away. He just smiled and kept walking. A week later, Elise knocked on Darren's door, holding a binder, a yellow legal pad. and a highlighter with its cap chewed nearly flat. She didn't waste time. This is the draft revision. I've been working on it with what's left of the board, but I want your eyes on it before it goes public. You think I'll find problems? I'm counting on it. Darren gestured toward the kitchen table. Put it down. Coffee? Black. I'm not here for comfort. They spent 3 hours flipping through the revised charter. Most of it looked harmless at first. Technical. Dry. But buried between harmless paragraphs were traps. Remnants of Victor's language. Clauses that allowed unspecified discretionary action, and terms like board interpretation of intent. Darren circled everything that sounded like it could be twisted. By the time Elise left, the pages were bleeding red ink. She didn't look offended. She looked relieved. You just saved us 2 years of future headaches. I didn't do it for the board, Darren said. I know. Later that week, Elise shared the redlined copy at the open forum. She didn't hide it. She handed it to every resident who showed up and said, "This is what happens when we let power become convenience." Darren Polk called it out. And if we're going to build something better, we start by burning the shortcuts. A few people clapped. No one rolled their eyes. That alone felt like progress. By the following weekend, the Facebook group that used to be filled with HOA warnings had transformed into something unrecognizable. Someone posted a link to HOA horror stories on Reddit. Someone else shared a photo of the gnome camera, jokingly calling it the neighborhood MVP. But it wasn't jokes that marked the shift. It was the tone. People weren't afraid of the board anymore. They were talking like neighbors. And that was new. Darren watched it unfold from the background. He didn't want a spotlight. He wanted something harder to earn. He wanted the quiet to mean something again. He replaced the batteries in his cameras, not because he expected trouble, but because now, they served a different purpose. Not surveillance. Memory. Proof of what had survived. And what would never be tolerated again. Darren didn't expect the last vote to be unanimous. But it was. Elise stood at the front of the clubhouse and read the final revision of the new HOA charter aloud. No unnecessary legal language, no room for misinterpretation, and no hidden clauses that could be weaponized by the next Victor Maddox who came along. Every page had gone through 3 rounds of edits. Every resident had the opportunity to weigh in. And when Elise finally said, "All in favor," every hand in the room went up. Even Darren's. Especially Darren's. It had been 3 months since the night Victor tried to frame him with a spray paint can and a camera he didn't know was staring straight up at him. 3 months since the podcast aired. Since the resignation. Since the slow, painful process of dismantling a power structure built on fear. Now nothing was quite the same. The HOA hadn't disappeared, but it had changed form. Instead of ruling from the top down, it now operated laterally. With rotating committees, transparent voting, and an open calendar anyone could attend. And the strangest part? People actually showed up. One evening, Darren sat on his porch, watching a group of kids race bicycles down the hill, near the community garden. For years there had been a rule against that, unsafe play on common ground. But it had quietly vanished during the policy overhaul. No one missed it. No one cared. Except the kids, who now had an unofficial racetrack with a view. And that felt like the kind of victory no charter would ever put into words. He still got nods from neighbors. Sometimes a quiet, thanks, sometimes a simple thumbs up. But it wasn't hero worship. That's not what he wanted. He didn't need a mural or a plaque, or his name on a garden stone. He just wanted the quiet to stay. And so far it had. The cameras stayed too, but now they felt like seatbelts, not shields. He'd renamed them on his app. Max Cam Porch Guard. Victor Watch. He kept that one as a joke. Even after Victor moved away, no one knew where the man had gone. No announcement, no forwarding address, just an empty house, with a lockbox and a realtor's number. Darren didn't bother to call. Some chapters don't need epilogues. Elise stopped by one afternoon, with 2 things. A final printed copy of the new HOA charter, and a bottle of dark roast coffee beans in a paper bag with his name scribbled across it. "No more edits," she said. "We're retiring your red pen. You've bled it dry. I'll keep it in a shadow box," Darren said, smiling. She handed him the charter. "It's clean. It's real. And it's built to hold up when people like Victor try to sneak back in. That's the goal." "No," she said. "That's the legacy." After she left, Darren walked the perimeter of his yard. He checked the edges where his fence met the sidewalk, where the camera inside the birdhouse once recorded Victor's last bluff. The flowers were blooming again. Max trotted beside him, tail relaxed, nose to the wind. No flyers taped to the door. No forged complaints in the mailbox. No lingering anxiety hanging in the air. just light and air, and the faint hum of a neighborhood finally breathing without tension. He stopped by the birdhouse, adjusted it slightly, and glanced at the small blinking light inside. Still watching, still recording, not out of fear anymore, but out of memory. Because some stories deserve to be kept whole, especially the ones where the people who were supposed to protect the neighborhood forgot what community even meant, and someone reminded them without ever raising his voice.